He probably needs no introduction, but I'd like to anyway. Lewis is arguably the most decorated rugby player that we have. 7 Premiership titles, 2 European titles, 2 Six Nations, 71 caps, 1 World Cup medal, and an MBE. I'm delighted that he's come today to talk to us. So, Lewis, if you'd like to join me. Thank you.
That lovely sort of introduction means that I've been retired a long time, because I seem to get better the longer I've been retired. And you didn't include the stat that I'm probably most famous for, which is being the first Englishman in 110 years to be sent off at Twickenham. And there've been
That was a great fight, though.
Yeah.
I watched it last week.
Did you? Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought, well, would I bring that up with you or not? Oh, I better not. You did.
Yeah. Well, it is pretty much all that exists of my career now, right? So I loved playing the game of rugby. I absolutely embraced it. I loved it with a passion. And you know, when you get thrown into a sport that you love, you get to play against brilliant teams. You get to encounter huge individuals. And the fight that you're talking about was actually with one of my teammates, not on the day, thankfully. But one of my teammates at Leicester, Halena Coury, and if anyone's seen Halena Coury, I like to describe him as a cross between the Terminator and the Predator. He's like 18 stone of Samoan beefcake, and he's got these sort of long dreadlocks, and we were playing Samoa back in 2005, and the game had been going. There was only about 7 minutes left of the match. We were winning about 60-0, I think, at the time, and I'm quite a loyal individual, and during the course of the game, for anyone that's seen the Samoans play, they're fairly physical beasts, obviously. You know, they like to put in a decent hit every now and again, cheap shot here or there, and late hits, and all that sort of stuff was going on. And my sort of sense of fairness was kicking in, and in the dying moments, Charlie Hodgson put in a crossfield kick to Mark Cueto, and Quates leapt in the air, caught this kick beautifully like a salmon, and Alex came across, 18 stone Samoan monster, and Quates is in the air and just takes him out in the air. Quates sort of topples, falls on his head, and I'm the nearest person to him, and I know Halena, I play with him at Leicester. I know he's quite fiery, and he's absolutely massive, obviously, and decent with his hands at a time when you could be. And Quates is a 13 stone Mancunian, and let's say if they got in a fight, I knew who was going to lose. So on that day, I was ready and prepared to step in and get between Halena and Mark. And what you don't see in the video is, as I get in to step in between the two of them to, separate and stop any ensuing fight that's about to incur. I just wanted to be that peacemaker. Halena drops a perfectly timed punch right on Mark's chin and just bops him like that, and Quates sort of stumbles back and falls over. And at that point, I think it's safe to say that the red mist descended a tad. I threw, I don't know, roughly 30 punches. The worst bit about it all was, if you go back to the video, and literally it is all that is left of my career. I played for 16 years, won all these trophies, I was a pretty decent rugby player, and you talked about all the stats, but if you put it in one fight, that is pretty much what you would, when I went to Paragon School for the first time, and I'm in the playground with the kids and introducing them, and obviously Dylan and Ethan must have told some of the younger kids who I was, and they went and told their parents, and all of a sudden the parents like chatting around, they're Googling me, and all that comes up is me fighting with Halena Coury. It's like they're starting to round up the kids. It's like, I'm not going to take you out in the playground. It's all right. Honestly, I'm much calmer now. But yeah, anyway, it was, it's not necessarily something I'm proud of, but remembered for. I was just so passionate about playing the game. I loved coming here to Bath. Obviously it feels strange sometimes talking at a Bath event because I had such a short period of time here playing, but it's home to me now. It's absolutely home. I was saying to, I've forgotten your name, Susan. I was saying to Mike here, chair of the Bath supporters, that my youngest is now ball boy at all the home games. So as a lifelong Leicester fan, and having played there for 15 years, I am okay with it because my home is now Bath. And I know I'm going to get booed roundly now when I say this, but my home is Bath, but my rugby home is still Leicester. I grew up there in the stands, chanting it. I get it. but I loved my time here. It's a super special place, Bath. And I'm really proud of the team, and Tarquin's here, I know, all they've achieved in those years. What is it, 13 years, I think, since I retired now, which doesn't seem possible, really. But to see where the team are now, the strides that they've made, you know, where the game's at as well, in terms of, I know there's a ton of stuff going on off the field, but in terms of where the game's at, but in terms of what it's like on the field, you know, Bath deliver. They are such a beautiful team to watch. They're hard-nosed. You know, you go back to the days of Tricky and some of the John Halls, the Gareth Chilcott, some of the more. I'm saying some of these names and conscious that maybe that not everyone in the room knows all the people that I'm talking about. We're talking about the sort of 80s horrible, hard-nosed Bath rugby players that then had the likes of Tricky that could sort of, you know, score a try or two here or there, that loved to stay out the way of any of the violence and tackling mostly, though, didn't you? And you look good for it now. I've got no idea what I'm talking about at the minute. Did you ask me a question at the start?
No, not yet.
No.
But you're doing really well.
Thank you. Yeah.
Have you done this before?
I've gone off on a complete random. It's
No,
been a
I'm
while
kidding.
since I've done one. It has been a while since I've done one, but yeah, it's just to start off, it's really nice to be here and see some friendly faces as well. So thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. It's great to see so many lovely faces in the room that you've known for such a long time, and I have too. Lewis and I first met in 2012 when you were just finishing your career, and I remember having a conversation with you where you said your mind was still Mad Dog, but your body was that of a ballerina, and it kept on breaking, and it is time to stop. And I'll never forget that, actually. But you really kindly, at that time, when you were transitioning and retiring from rugby, decided to cycle 984 miles from John O'Groats to Land's End for Bath Rugby Foundation. And in the room today, there are quite a few cyclists, including Tricky and some of the Savills guys over there who cycled with you. The 36 cyclists raised just shy of £100,000, and you and Andy Beattie and Flats and all of the other cyclists made that happen so that we could do more work in the community with the 10,000 vulnerable youngsters. But I'll come back to it later.
Was that the first event?
It was pretty much the first event we had. I rode to the Isles of Scilly. We did a row with 20 of us, and we got into Cornish gigs, and we rode from there to Scilly. And you guys, it was our biggest and first event, from John O'Groats down to Land's End. And that last day of biblical rain that you guys went through was absolutely incredible. That was tough. Yeah.
I absolutely loved that event. It was the first proper challenge I did since playing, and because I was relatively fit, I remember Flats and Gruey asking me if I'd join them, and my mindset, as it is to most things, is like, you know, cycling, how hard can it be? As it turns out, really, really, really hard. And my undercarriage will a testament to that. But the poor nurse that had to patch it together, was it day 8? Anyway, everyone's finished eating. We won't go into that. But
well, we are going to come back to that a little bit later, actually. Not your undercarriage.
Not my undercarriage.
Not your undercarriage.
No.
The cycle. I want to talk a little bit about your recent news. Everybody in the room obviously knows you've talked about it globally, but we all, I suppose, here today just want to know, how are you?
Thank you. As you can imagine, it's a question I've been asked often recently, and for anyone that isn't aware, because I'm conscious that, you know, not everyone is I was diagnosed with Motor Neurone Disease 3 months ago, which, oh God, you know, actually, when you say it out loud, it's a weird thing, because I don't often say those words out loud very often, and it's a hugely impacting thing. You never appreciate, you know, a diagnosis like that. You hear it all the time, right? You hear other people going through it, but you have no idea how you will react when it happens to you. And just to give you a little bit of the build up to it, so that you're aware how things transpire. So I still train, try and keep fit, otherwise I get particularly grumpy and my wife hates me if I don't go to the gym. So keep active. And over the period of time, just felt a little bit of weakness in my right shoulder, so went to the physio, check it out, and he was like, no worries mate, we'll just do some rehab, you'll crack this in a couple of weeks. So I did the rehab, didn't really make any difference, so I was really lucky. So a guy called Kerry Parham, if anyone's had any physio issues. I'm not doing a sales pitch for Gary here, but it does sound like it. If anyone needs a decent physio, he was brilliant, because he was like, look, I don't know what this is, so let's put you onto someone, a specialist that might. I then went up to the Bath clinic and met Guy. I've completely forgotten his surname, but again, another brilliant specialist who said, right, this doesn't look sinister, but I'm going to put all the steps in place so that we can tick off what it may not be and see if we can figure out what it is. And because of that, diagnosis with motor neurons is sometimes well over a year. But because of those two individuals that I met, I was diagnosed within 9 to 10 weeks, which is really quick. And obviously, for the progression of the illness, the sooner you find with any illness or disease, call it an illness, it's not an illness, it's a disease. The sooner you find out, the better. But when you're given the awareness, so Kerry called me and he said, look, it doesn't look sinister, but we'll do the MRI and let's see what that throws up. Might be just some old rugby injuries. Let's face it, I used to throw myself around a little bit and put my head in harm's way. So that was very plausible. And the MRI result came back and I knew when it was coming. And I suppose in the back of my mind, I had this sort of niggling thing that maybe it was something, even though he'd said it wasn't particularly sinister. And in the call, and this was the worst bit of it, I suppose, and sorry to be any sort of mood dampener, I'm happy talking about it, and I hope you don't mind me sharing in case it's useful. But the hardest bit by far was the conversation after MRI where he said, right, it's not what I thought it was, it's not a neck issue, it's not an old rugby injury, it could be something else, let's not leave anything unsaid, what do you want to ask me? So at that point I had to...
No, it's okay.
Sorry.
No, don't apologise.
Don't often...
It's okay. Do you know what's amazing?
Oh, well. It's all right, yeah. Thank you. It's funny when you talk about it. I've spoken about it lots, obviously, and sometimes it just catches up with you, right? And you realise the enormity of it. And replaying this to you has definitely done that for me. But the hardest bit by far was not knowing, but having an awareness that it could be. So he said, right, ask me the question, could it be M&D? I can't tell you it's not M&D. So from that moment on, actually that was the worst by far, because I had no control, I didn't know. I'm just nervous and worrying, how's it going to impact the family, how's it going to impact me? What does it really mean? Because all I know about M&D is the end result, and that's pretty ugly. And we've all seen Doddy and we've all seen Rob. So that bit was the worst. And as soon as I found out, actually, do you know what? It was a real breath of fresh air. Breath of fresh air is definitely the wrong way to put it, but it was, you know what I mean? It was, it was relief. Thank you. That's it. Can we swap roles? It was a relief, because all of a sudden it gave you information about what you had and what you could do with it. And I suppose we all liked, as much control as we can have in our lives. And I suppose for me, that information gave me that. And the irony is there's not actually much that I can control with this disease, but there is always things you can do. And as soon as I found out that piece of information, we then ummed and ahed about whether we should share it, because the onslaught of information or love or just putting it out there comes with a backlash of stuff in a positive way. Or how does it affect the kids? How does it affect my wife? How does it affect me? All that type of stuff. My wider family, my mum. I'm an only child. But I decided, I think as I always have done, I like to be open and honest with my kids. As soon as I was told, we went home straight away, and I told them because I wanted them to know they were going to recognise I was a part of something that wasn't right. So why lie to them? And I felt that the good that could be done by sharing was much greater than what could be done by not sharing. And I feel so much love and support since we've done it. It's been slightly overwhelming at times, but it has been awesome. The number of people that are ringing up. I've obviously thought I was a bit of a twat for quite a long time, but I don't know whether people are just lying now or apparently I'm all right. But yeah, so people talk about the community and we're talking about the supporters, right? You're talking about the Bath Foundation and all the great work that's done. But the rugby community is special, like it does. But you only really appreciate it. You hear it, and I talk about it, but you only really appreciate it when you find yourself in a position, like I'm in now. And I say fortunate. I am fortunate in the sense that I have a profile that means people are aware of me. Therefore, information comes my way. Medical information, charitable information, just kindness and support. There are a ton of people that are diagnosed with this and multiple other diseases that don't have any support whatsoever. So I suppose when I've got my head around it a little bit more, and we've planned a few things, and I've taken care of the family and all the bits that I need to do there, in the new year, there will be some challenges. There will be some good shit to get stuck into, excuse my French. And a good friend of mine sat over there, Alan Chambers, so been on numerous challenges around the world with Alan. So I would definitely be undertaking something with him. It may not involve a bike because of the undercarriage issue last time, but yeah, no, there'll be plenty of stuff to get into, and if anyone's interested, I'll share it and put it out there. Did that answer the question? It was yeah.
So many of you will know that we changed the date for this lunch, and that's because your son was representing England in Qatar as an under-17 goalkeeper for England, basically. And so we kind of swapped it around. Lewis's concern mainly was that some of you guys might not be able to turn up because he was going to go and see his son play football. And Sarah and I on the call.
I was mostly worried that you'd be absolutely disgusted that he was playing football, to be honest. But
we again, red card, football. I was trying to avoid them. You bring them up. But no, Sarah and I just said, no one cares where we eat. No one cares what day it is. They just want to come and listen to you. But you were more bothered about us. But the right thing was that you went out and you went to see Dylan play.
You say play. Yeah. So I'm a very supportive dad. I love for my kids to do whatever they want, and I'm just in awe of that. If they find something they love, that's great. And when Dylan did tell me it was football that he wanted to do, once I got over the initial shock and disappointment, I did definitely go out. But no, we went, and he's had such a wonderful journey. And for me, as a lifelong rugby fan who stereotypical views of footballers diving around and screaming and rolling around and nonsense that occurs on a football pitch, but he is a goalie, so it's the closest to being a rugby player on a football pitch, so that's acceptable. But it was a great experience being in Qatar, watching your son. For anyone that's got kids in the room, proud moment, right? Whatever your kids do, but watching him play for his country, watching him put on the jersey. Actually, he didn't get to play a single minute in the World Cup itself, but the experience that he gained because of that is second to none. And actually, he's come back much hungrier now. So, as a goalie, if you're on the bench, it's not like in rugby. They don't rotate the goalies very often, do they? You're having a proper shocker if you get rotated in football. But yeah, anyway, I'm not here to talk about my lad, but
we are. So the interesting thing is when you went out to Australia in '98, you also were representing England, and you yourself also didn't get onto the pitch. So you must have had that resonance with Dylan to say, now it's okay. I was young. I went out there. I was on the sidelines. How do you then teach your son, teach people in the room to kind of bide your time, be patient, seize the moment and make an impact when you can?
Well, you literally just explained it there, I think. Bide your time, have an impact when you can. The Tour of Doom in '98 was the tour that you're referring to. Will tell you how well that tour went. That was Clive Woodward's first tour in charge. We lost by record scores to Australia, South Africa and New Zealand. I remember Matt Poole, who was a teammate of mine at the time in Leicester. I was only 19, saying, whatever you do, when you go out on this tour in '98, it was only 2 years after rugby turned professional, make sure you get in with the right crowd. Don't do what I did and go out and, have a few beers and get in with the wrong crowd. And the first evening I went out wanting to make sure I got along with my teammates, do the right thing, train as hard as I can, try and be involved in one of the test matches. So we had a team social the first weekend, went out really conscious that I was a young lad, wanted to impress, came home at like 9:30, 9:45, got back to the team hotel, one of the other younger lads, and then none of the team had returned. And I was like, oh, do you think we should actually be out with the other lads? Are we going to get criticised? So I went back out, and I didn't get in until about 5 o'clock. I didn't play again. And so the lessons that I could tell Dylan, he's 17, obviously, so he doesn't have to worry about the sort of adult nature of the game and drinking, and all the other stuff that sort of went on in it. Hello, do you have permission? They said, do you have permission? I'm not sure. What is it that you have permission to do? I'm excited to know. Yeah. But yeah, you know, offering advice is easy. I learned a lot from that tour because I was an amateur mindset at that point. You know, I came through as a student. I was still a student at that point. A lot of the lads that I toured with were amateur players, really just breaching into the professional. And that tour taught me a lot about what I needed to change to be successful in a career. If I wanted a career, if I wanted to have any career whatsoever, what I needed to change to do so. Dylan has that mentality already. Football's very different. It starts much younger. They start at 7. The professionalism is sort of ingrained into them. But for me, in answer to your question, it was really easy. This is an opportunity for Dylan, and all he needed to do was show up, show them what he can do in every moment that he has the opportunity to do so. And whether he starts or not, he's not in control of that, right? The coach picks the teams. It's not something he can control. He can control the attitude and the application with which he turns up in each and every session and off the field, and that's what he did. You know, I think sometimes in sport, your credentials can rise when you don't even set foot on the field. And actually, because the team maybe didn't perform as well as they should have, the guy who was starting ahead of him, you know, was okay. Actually, he left the tour really hungry that he wanted to do it, and really highly regarded by the coaches around him. I know as a proud dad, I'd probably say that anyway, right? But that is, yeah. But of course, you know, attitude in sport. You know, there are so many blessed individuals that play the game, and you know, we've all seen that across the generations. But for me, it all comes down to attitude. If you have the attitude and you can apply the desire and put it into training, and you can do it consistently, and you can be disciplined with it, then you will have the success, whatever level that may be at, but you'll have the success applicable to that attitude. That sounds like I said a lot of really weird sort of words in there.
It's okay, we can
lost myself. But it does come down to attitude. And I suppose, you know, if there's one thing I'm proud of, whether he goes on and has a career or not, how he goes about his business is definitely what makes me proud as a parent.
So fast forward 5 years then, and 6 of the players that were on that tour from hell and the manager, Clive Woodward, then turn up and take you right the way through, and you win the World Cup. So to change yourself from having nothing, from walking away from one of the biggest defeats England have ever really had, to turning yourself into a winning team, what were the hardest moments, and what were the conversations that had to be had between you guys as teammates in order to turn that around? Because there's no way you could have turned that around. You know, it's 6 people with the same people on that pitch. You know, you, Matt, Josh, Johnny, you know, Danny. You're all incredible players. What's different about then and then the 5 years later?
Good question. I think we all learned a lot. I talked about what I learned in '98. It was Clive's first tour. I think Clive learned an enormous amount, who he could trust, what he needed. He'd also been through the World Cup in '99. But in answer to your question, I think, you know, Clive's genius was, in my eyes anyway, and I'm sure people have their own opinion, was that he recognised what he was really good at and what he wasn't good at really quickly. And he wanted to be a world-class coach. And actually, he was a world-class manager. And as soon as I feel like he recognised that, he stepped back from the coaching side, got in, you know, all the world-class coaches that he could, and you know, Phil Larder and Dave Redding and Dave Aldred, and you know, the list goes on. And that just kept expanding and expanding. And all of a sudden, he just had this small army of people around him that were experts at what they did and excellent in their chosen field. And then I suppose for me, you know, like any good team, you needed a clear goal. Our goal was, so we lost in the '99 World Cup quarter-final to Yanni de Beer. We seem to have a history against the South Africans, and Dirk, despite donating those diamonds, you're still a South African, therefore I dislike you. And after that World Cup, so the players and the coaches sat down and went, right, look, this is poor. It's in our home. So it was in Twickenham. It was in England, the World Cup in '99. What do we need to do to make sure when we arrive in 2003 that we've done all we can to be in the best place to win that? And off the back of that, the coaches and players sat down and just focused on two clear things. One was being the best prepared team in the world, and one was being the fittest, because New Zealand for decades had been the fittest team in the world. They set the standards. So those were the two clear goals that we were armed with as players, and we went away and worked on. You booked holidays around training camp so you could do extra fitness. You found out where your individual players were. For me it was Richie McCaw, not just Neil Back and Josh Kronfeld that I had alongside me at Leicester, who were world class in their own right. What are Richie McCaw's standards? Where do I need to be better? And then with the pool of people that Clive was bringing, that sort of, where he was filling those knowledge gaps, putting in those proper experts, all of a sudden the team were growing. The continuity was there, the wins started to come, and then we had to back those wins up week on week, and that sort of developed the trust and the confidence in the plan that you were moving towards. And I suppose as individuals, as you go through that, you start to believe, right? It's all well and good to go, well, we want to win the World Cup in 4 years. But we can all have that goal unless you put the process in place and you have real belief and commitment to that process, and absolutely no dickheads along the way as well. And I say it sounds really harsh when I say it, but it is absolute gold. If you have anyone that is not bought into that journey with you, then they cannot be a part of that journey because they're a distraction. And there are plenty of players, and for multiple reasons as well, but there are plenty of players that probably missed out because they couldn't buy into the team ethos. They thought maybe they were more important. They just didn't get that mindset that didn't make it. And Clive was ruthless like that. If you get one shot, you take that chance. You're either in it with me or you're not. And we ended up at the World Cup being ranked number one side in the world. So a 4-year period from '99, you go back 6 years to '98. Huge changes occurred very quickly. And we went to that World Cup as number one, as favourites. We'd won the Grand Slam for the first time in however many years. And all of a sudden, the thing that people won't know is all the preparation for that World Cup was about South Africa. It was about the pool game against South Africa. Because if we beat South Africa in that pool game, it meant we wouldn't face New Zealand until the final. So all of our pre-season preparation, everything that we did in the build-up to that, the 3-month camp for that World Cup was about beating South Africa in the pool game. I hadn't even thought anywhere beyond that. And when we did it, all of a sudden we could then focus on the next match. But anyway, the rest is history, and I won't go through the whole World Cup, but I'll share with you one story, which was my role in the final. And as a 23, 24-year-old at the time, 24 would have been, I was on the bench. I'd played a lot of the games leading up to it, because Richard Hill had been injured, and he'd got back fit for the semi-final, so I was back onto the bench. And I suppose one of the pieces of Clive's real brilliance was that he knew that we were going to be good enough to make the World Cup final. If we were good enough and we were there, what was it going to take to win it? So he went away with his team and looked at all the scenarios, all the eventual outcomes across the global sports. Football, American football, cricket, golf, rugby. Probably not golf, actually, that's an individual one, isn't it? He probably played a lot of golf, but I can't imagine it. And what was the common factor? And the common factor across all those team sports was that invariably the team that won, it came down to the last minute or one pivotal play. And so in the build-up, those 3 months, we prepared and rehearsed all eventual outcomes for the last minute and a half, 2 minutes of a game, whether you need to defend your goal line, whether you need to score a try, kick a drop goal. So come the World Cup final, when we are level on points and there's a minute and a half left. Well, actually, I'll take you back a little bit further. There's 7 minutes left. Richard Hill goes down in the corner, and I'm on the bench still at this point. And I started the match. If anyone's played rugby, being on the bench is the worst position, right? Because you've done all the warm-up, you're sighted, you're pumped, you're ready to go, and then you've got to sit on the bench and just chill out for a bit. And the nerves, Johnny was kicking the points, Alan Flatley was kicking his points. We had a score from Jason Robinson and Lottie Takiri. The game was tight, man. It was probably the tightest World Cup that we'd seen until that point. And on the bench, I was, a very confident, young athlete and back rower thinking, look, Clive, you need to get me on. I can make a difference in this final, right? You wouldn't be there if you didn't think that, right? So I'm thinking, get me on. And as the game seesaws and Elton and Johnny are kicking these points, all of a sudden, we move into injury time, and the gremlins start creeping up your spine. And I'm sat on the bench thinking, oh shit, do I actually want to go on potentially be the person that gives away the penalty that cost England a World Cup. And I did give away a few penalties in my career, if anyone watched. But so I'm sat there dealing with all these genuine fears and doubts in my mind. Biggest occasion of my sporting career, you know, however many, 80, 90,000 people in the stand, millions watching. And as I'm thinking this, Christ, do I really want to go on? Trying to repress all this negative energy happening in my head. Clive, who's, as I've explained, one of the best managers I've ever come across, came over to me and he just tapped me on the leg. He went, "Moodos, you ready?" I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "You're nervous?" I was like, "I'm a little bit nervous, yeah. Feeling a little bit anxious." He was like, "Don't worry about that. You'll be fine. I'm just going to give you one piece of advice." This is exactly what he said to me. "Whatever you do, don't give away any fucking penalties." That was... And I love Clive, but that was definitely not the most motivational thing he could have done. Anyway, it all worked out all right because I went on, I caught the ball off the pursuing line out. And just to quickly move to the last minute and a half. So we know the outcome. We know that Johnny, the glorious human being that he is, kicked the drop goal with his wrong foot. I mean, if you wanted to rub it in anymore about how unbelievable he is. But what you won't know is from that line out in the last minute and a half. So the ball was thrown to the back, which is unusual because they're not thrown to the back all day. And I don't know if Ben and Steve Thompson, who had been calling the lineouts, had realised that I'd come on at the back or not, but they decided to throw it to the back in my first involvement of the game, pretty much. And people often ask, you know, were you nervous? And actually, I wasn't nervous in the slightest because we'd rehearsed it 1,000,000 times in training, so we knew exactly what was going to happen. You know, Tomo, who was a number 8 up until a couple of months before the World Cup. That's not true. A couple of years before the World Cup. So hooking was a new skill to him, really. He was still developing it, and now you're on the World Cup stage, it's drizzling with rain, the ball's slightly slippery. You want Steve Thompson, who's only been a hooker for 2 years, to throw the ball to the back of the line out as far as he can get it, accurately. Thankfully, I roomed with Tomo, which was an experience. I won't go into that, but we'll ask about it later. And we rehearsed all these sort of situations in our room as well, so I knew exactly where the ball would come. So when I went up in the air, put my hands down around my groin, that's exactly where the ball arrived. Dropped it, watch it, exactly what happened. Thankfully, they had George Smith and Phil Waugh, who weren't particularly tall individuals in the back row. Anyway, ball gets dropped off to Matt Dawson, blah, blah, blah. We get to the point where Johnny's about to drop the goal, and what you won't know is that my role, so Clive was so meticulous, right? We plan everything. Okay, we had that zigzag call, which was getting Johnny in a position to kick the goal. If Johnny's in a position, but there's a ton of Aussies ready to charge him down because he must have kicked 300 drop goals in that tournament. So the fans and the Aussies, and we knew exactly what was going to happen. So if they congregate around that breakdown, we need a get-out option. And so if anyone's got a video recorder, I suppose you can probably watch it on YouTube actually. Just rewind it, and you'll see that minute when Neil back passes to Martin Johnson and the commentator thinks it's going to be the moment that Johnny Wilkinson kicks the drop goal. You will notice that all the Aussies have congregated around the breakdown to charge the kick, and you will see a young blonde-haired flanker in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen waving his hands around frantically, because I saw my own moment of World Cup glory and was probably the only individual on the pitch who thought, "You selfish twat," when he kicked it. Yeah, but no, but you know what? We couldn't have fallen to a better human being, was it? I told you about all the fears I had sat on the bench. As I was waving my hands thinking, okay, I was just genuinely on, there's no one in front of me. If he kicks it now, I could score. I then immediately met with, oh my God, but I've got to catch it then, and whatever, yeah. So it was, yeah, thankfully Johnny kicked it. I was relieved. It was, what a privileged moment. I know Bath had, you know, Gruy and Catty as well, and just to be a part of that team with those individuals was special. You know, whatever you get to do in your life, we were talking, and the things that you move on to do when you finish playing, and actually just being a part of a team, doing stuff with people that you really enjoy being around, that are committed to something wholeheartedly. You know, being on that field with those individuals and getting it done is just the singular most enjoyable moment of my life. And my wife's not here, so I can say that, it's fine.
Perfect. So that day when you caught the line out, which obviously has given you guys so much glory since, and you know, so much pride for the whole of England, that's the day when Bath Rugby Foundation was born.
Really?
Yeah. So, bag of balls. Oh bless. It's like more him catching the ball, actually, because if you'd not caught the line out, nothing would have happened. So
Exactly.
that's how I'm saying it.
So someone asked me the other day, are you annoyed that people don't, celebrate the fact that you caught the ball at the back of the line out more often? I was like, am I annoyed that people don't? I would be annoyed if people congratulated me for catching a ball. That was pretty much my job as a rugby player. It wasn't like kicking a drop goal with your wrong foot it was catching. It was as simple as that. No.
Still did it though. But that was the day we were born. So bag of balls, desire to change, make a difference in the community. And 23 years on, going strong. First event that you helped us with, our first big event really, with the cycling. But you just at that sort of point in time were sort of studying. You were studying business at De Montfort. You were looking at not just being rugby, Lewis. Even though you were playing and you were at your peak at that time, you were thinking, what's next? What's coming? How can I be more of a person, more of a player? And somebody approached you, and they were a life coach and a business coach, and they offered you an opportunity, didn't they? Can you tell the room about that?
Yeah, sure. It was as simple as sometimes life has a weird way of paying it forward, right? So when I was entering the latter stages of my international career, we used to get 2 shirts for the game, as the lads still do now. And there's only so many jerseys you can keep in the basement or give to your kids. So at the end of a match, I'd give one of my jerseys away, normally to a kid that had been patient enough to hang around. It was normally an hour and a half, 2 hours after the end of the game. So if they're patient enough to hang around in the rain, then they 100% deserve a jersey. And there was a chap called Jonathan who was waiting outside, who I had never met and didn't know, but unbeknownst to me, he'd been there for an hour and a half, 2 hours with his son, and hadn't got any signatures, had got there late, was just telling his son to be patient. So they've got to come out this way. They've got to come out this way. And anyway, I was the next person that came out and gave one of my shirts over, and as it transpired, I don't recall that moment particularly, but have been shared it now, because when I got to Paragon and took the kids in and told you about obviously the experience in the playground with the parents, they were all very friendly, really. Jonathan was one of the parents there, and I had a call from the headmaster, which was a troubled soul at school. I had plenty of calls from headmasters, so I was a little bit nervous. It was only my first week in. I'm not even a pupil, I'm just a parent, what have we done? And calls me into his office, and he says, oh, look, there's this chap called Jonathan. He said you donated a shirt to his son, and he was trying to teach him the art of patience or whatever, and because you came out and gave him a shirt, it taught him a great life lesson. And he said, if there's anything that he can ever do to help you, then just to give him a call. So I chatted to Jonathan, bearing in mind that I'd just been retired, a couple of months, and chatting with Jonathan, and I took him on as life coach. I had no idea what I wanted to do when I finished playing. Rugby was my everything. I loved it. I was committed and passionate to it, and I wanted to make sure I was focused on it. I knew my career could end at any point. I had 14 operations. I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis whilst I was playing. So any one of those things could have finished me off. So I knew that I had to be prepared, but I wasn't prepared when I got to the end, because I was focused on playing and being the best rugby player I could. So I got to that stage, and I just said, Jonathan, look, it'd probably be useful to have a chat. And anyway, I suppose, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but sometimes we just need to talk, right, and share with someone that isn't in your situation, isn't going through your work commitments, isn't in your family. And having Jonathan there at that time as, I suppose, a mentor was pivotal, and allowed me to focus my energies. We ended up setting up a charity, my wife and I. And that was, 13 years ago? I'm still in conversation with Jonathan now, and who's actually helping me through a lot of the stuff with my M&D. So I don't know why we're sharing the story, but in terms of, I suppose, paying it forward, and a simple act that I had no idea how important it could be for Jonathan, a child at the time, how important it could be for me in life later, and meeting Jonathan and the impact that he had on me, the ability to work through my thinking and understand where I could add impact in the life, where my skills were, and then where could I apply them in the world, all that type of stuff. So yeah, just happy to have someone like him on my side, and especially now when he's sifting through all this information. As I said, I'm not particularly academic, so when people are throwing reams of medical information at me, it's definitely not my strong suit, so I just pass that straight on to Jonathan, and he can figure it out for me. But yeah.
That was probably
Grateful,
the
I
best
suppose.
shirt you gave away.
100%.
In your life,
It was
really.
the most rewarding jersey I ever wore, yeah, because it's supported me in multiple ways beyond playing.
But it's also allowed you to open up something that you wanted to do before, because your desire to be a conscious leader, a conscious person, to be purposeful. You know, when you were leaving rugby, that was obviously the time where you were most potentially adrift. Mm-hmm. So meeting Jonathan would have been an incredible moment. But also you must have had a ton of fan mail as well. You know, loads of fan mail, come on, huge public profile, loads of people wanted to wish you well, you know, what are you doing? But there was one letter that cut through everything, didn't it, for you, which has changed the last 13 years.
Yeah, I was chatting with my table about it actually, and the only real decision I made when I retired was about time. Ironically, now I'm incredibly grateful that I made that choice, because I met lots of business people who'd been supremely successful during my playing career, and as they were retiring or selling their business in their sort of 40s and 50s, and were looking to figure out what they were going to do next, most of them said the same thing. And I was probably in my 20s or 30s, and it was just noticing what they were talking to me about was that they were focused on time, and it was then time with the family, it was time doing the things they enjoyed. So actually when I stepped out of playing, my only conscious decision was that time has to be applied in the areas that are most important to me, and that was for my family. And you know, cast yourself forward 15 years, I'm so grateful that, you know, I got to do that now, because, you know, none of us in charge of the time we have, are we? Only what we do with it. And the fact that I had Jonathan to help me make that decision, oh man, whew, not again. But, you know, so grateful to be able to do that. But off the back of it, and you asked me something completely different, and we were chatting on the table. So I had a letter in the post after retiring. I'll try and keep this short. I'm conscious I can ramble on for a long period of time.
Keep rambling, it's
You guys
good.
have probably got really important meetings to go to, and you think,
is everyone okay?
is he going to shut up soon?
Everyone's fine.
Okay.
Keep going.
Well, I'm sweating heavily as well. So
Water?
someone's put the aircon on, which is great. But yeah, so I got this letter, got lots of letters, but didn't often get handwritten letters. So the fact that someone had taken the time to write me a letter, I think is, what was it at the time, 33, literally just retired a week before. I was like, okay, do you know what? Someone's taking the time. I opened the letter, read through, and it was a chap called Graham Stark, and Graham had a son who had a rare form of cancer, and he was like, Lewis, look, you're retired now, you've probably got a lot of time on your hands, you've probably got a load of spare kit. It's quite cheeky, but I suppose you can be in a letter, you can be quite punchy. He was like, look, if you've got time, do you mind coming up to Sheffield and supporting my lad? He's 14, he's got a rare form of cancer. He wants to raise money for his mates. He can't go on tour because he's too ill, but he wants to help his mates go on tour to South Africa. So I went up, met Joss, met Graham, met the family, took a load of kit up, offloaded it so they could auction, and had a great time. And Joss and Leo was his brother, got to meet both of them, really lovely lads. Also Joss, you know, not only a gifted rugby player, fullback at Sheffield, county javelin champion, and over the course of a year and a half got to know the family, kept in touch with Joss, obviously as they went through this sort of medical, you know, roller coaster in hospital and various different things, you know, recovering from it, and then impact it has on the wider family, on Leo. So just being supportive and having conversations where I could, as simple as that. And about a year and a half later, Graham called me up again and said, mate, look, Joss is having a really tough time. You know, he's in and out of hospital loads. Leo's not getting any of our attention because we've got to be focused on Joss. Is there anything you can do just to lift their spirits? So used my contacts at the RFU, went and organised a game at Twickenham. So with hospitality, one that I knew we'd win, so the Welsh. And yeah, I mean it's ironic. It was the Welsh. And we got there. We had brilliant hospitality. Apologies to anyone that is Welsh in the room. Yeah, I know it's a tough time at the minute. There's probably many tears being shed. I turned the game on for like 30 seconds just to think, because they played so well against the All Blacks. Can't be going it was the All Blacks, wasn't it? Can't be going that badly. 66-0 after 40 minutes or something. Okay, anyway, digress. We're in Twickenham watching Wales. We're sat in the hospitality box, and the chair of the RFU's there, various other dignitaries. We have a great time. Thankfully, England beat Wales. And take the boys down into the change rooms afterwards. Chris Robshaw sorted us out, and we met Manu Tuolangi and Joe Marler and Chris Robshaw and all the various lads that were playing at the time, which was fantastic, exactly what the boys needed. We then went upstairs, we had post-match hospitality in the spirit of rugby. And one of the things I loved about Joss, and it maybe sort of came from his dad Graham, was, you know, he never held back on anything. And even though he was 16, he was quite frail at this point because he was going through some serious chemo. We're sat down at a table, and exactly those names I mentioned. So Chris Robshaw, Joe Marler, Manu Tuolangi sat with us. And Joss's first input into the conversation was where he thought the lads should have performed better during the course of the game. I was like, mate, that's risky. There's some sizable beasts. But anyway, you know, he was just a great character, and of course the lads took it well. Anyway, we got up, we went, took him around, had loads of photos, pictures, autographs, did everything. And we left, and Graham left with the boys, and at the end of the event, had a great time. And about 2 days later, Graham called and said, mate, that was perfect. Look, the boys have been beaming from ear to ear. It was exactly what they needed. You got pictures and scarves and all sorts, you know, dotted around the room. Can't thank you enough, but I've just got to let you know, sadly, Joss passed away yesterday. And I suppose for an individual like me who had lost his purpose in life and didn't know what he was going to do next, receiving that information was incredibly powerful. And me and Annie were able to apply our energies into fundraising for what we then set up, which was the Moody MBE Foundation, and what went on to support young families living with brain tumours. And meeting Joss and meeting his dad was an incredibly privileged and powerful time in my life, and feel like I've been able to, you know, use my time well in the years since playing. And again, down to, you know, a decent mentor, that's massively underplaying it, a fantastic mentor in Jonathan supporting me. It sounds, again, that's taking it on a little bit of a downward curve, but it's been the course of my life, has been, you know, when you leave sport and when you leave business, whatever it is, you have this ego, you have this pride that's attached with, I captained England, for God's sake. It's like when I leave the game, I should be going on and doing loads of leadership stuff, and I should be, you know, doing all this important, really high profile business stuff. And actually, I just really fucking love being with people and working with people and helping. And, you know, that aligned with working in charities, and that aligned with being a mentor and all that type of great stuff. But it took a lot to park my pride around that, and years probably of procrastinating until I was really capable of going, actually, my skills are working with people and supporting groups and individuals. And I think when I was comfortable saying that, actually you could park the ego, you could park the pride, and you could really focus on what you're good at. Yeah.
Just before we finish, you've raised £2.5 million for the Moody MBE Foundation over that time. You've changed lives and you've saved lives.
We've done some really crazy challenges as well over the years, and I blame Alan for that, because when I set up the charity, I love challenging myself. Right, as an athlete, you want to know how good you are, so you can only do that by competing against the best in the world. So for me, I was playing Richie McCaw or playing the South Africans. I hate to admit it, but you know, the most physical. So I needed a void, I needed something to fill, and having a mate in Alan, I said to him, mate, look, thinking of doing a challenge. Obviously, we'd just done the bike ride at this point. What can we do? You know, maybe a marathon. Should we do something interesting in the UK? He was like, South Pole? South Pole? Actually, he said North Pole. Really? Do you think at first I was thinking like cake bake, you know, half marathon, and so Alan's a polar explorer, and that was where we went. The first bloody challenge to the North Pole was like, I mean, just had an epic 10 years of doing challenges and raising money. So it's slightly selfish doing things that I generally love and taking people that I enjoy being around, you know, invested in a common goal, which is fundraising and doing something for good. So I don't know why I went off on a tangent. Yeah,
it's the best way to fundraise. People are having fun, you're having fun, you're challenging yourself, you're raising money, you're changing lives. I don't think anyone could say that. It's not a life well lived, is it? So.